Satnam Revolutionaries, and welcome to episode 53 of the Heart-Centered Revolution podcast. We are so excited to have you back. Today's episode, we're talking about kind of the distinction and the relationship between having a habit and having a discipline. And so it's a really interesting topic. And as we talk about it, you're going to see how both of these behavior patterns are at work in your life and how you can use them to support you in getting more alignment and dropped into that heart center, which is always where we end up in this podcast, of course. At the end of the episode, I'm so excited because I'm going to lead you through an actual meditation today. It is a pranayam meditation. It's called Meditation for a Calm Heart, and we'll just do 3 minutes, but it's a powerful one that can really help you get really clear on your perception of your relationship with yourself and with other people. And if you've been enjoying these podcasts, if they've been coming out, please subscribe wherever you listen. That way you'll be notified once we publish a new episode. All right, I'll be back after the discussion with Ramtin and I. Welcome to the discussion for episode 53. Today we're going to talk about kind of the differences between having a habit and having discipline, and the benefits, just kind of how those can factor into your life and into your spiritual growth. So Ramtin, why don't you start? This was kind of came from your inspiration. And so how would you define a habit versus a discipline?
Hello, everyone, and Satnam. To me, a habit is something that we do that comes from an underlying force. So that underlying force is through our subconscious mind. As we do something repeatedly, it becomes a habit. The subconscious mind is for us to program for things that we do physically, repeatedly, to become automatic. So we don't have to think about it. We don't have to think about walking. We don't have to think about the way we talk all the time. We don't have to think about a lot of things that we do as it happens within our body and the actions that we take. Now, something like brushing your teeth, when you do it repeatedly, becomes very beneficial. You don't have to think about it. Every night before you go to bed, you just go and brush your teeth. That's something that's mechanical, and when it is a habitual thing, is beneficial to us. And that's why we have that mechanism, if you will, within us through the power of the subconscious mind. Things that we do mechanically, driving, for example, another thing that we do. When it becomes habitual, the way we do it, if we do it correctly, then it is something that's beneficial. We don't have to remember it every time. We don't have to think about it so much, right? So that's a kind of a habit that's beneficial to us. So the concept of being disciplined, taking disciplined action, that also ties into our habits. So as we develop a certain habit, now we apply a little bit more consciousness to make it more disciplined. And that's a disciplined action that we take. And again, that ties in sort of closely with a certain habit. And the habit could also go negative, right? So that's why when we have both negative or positive habits is ingrained within our subconscious, and we do it automatically, and it's proven to us that it's harder to get out of that habit a little bit. And in a way, that negative action that we're taking mechanically, physically, is sort of a disciplined action. Right? So negative, positive, both are sort of in a different part of the spectrum, but they're disciplined actions, if you will. And that is part of our subconscious memory, subconscious programming, if you will.
What do you mean by disciplined action?
So that's a good question. When we try to change our habits, then we have to create a different habit, right? And by changing the direction of a habit that we have to become a little bit more disciplined.
I see.
So when we apply that sort of force into changing our habits, then we take disciplined action, even though our habitual way of doing things calls for something different, but we have to apply that level of consciousness, applied consciousness, to change that discipline, to change the habit, and that becomes disciplined action.
I see.
Right?
So if you want to change a habit, you need to apply discipline and kind of use that consciousness and that mindfulness and the discipline to do something different and essentially create a new habit.
Correct. And when you take that discipline action, because of the previous habits that you had, then is not comfortable sometimes, right? Your
Mm-hmm.
body draws you back to towards your older habit, right? Is not as comfortable, and you continue taking discipline action, but that discipline action also becomes a habit,
Yeah.
right? Becomes a habit, and therefore at that level, you're doing the same thing over and over again without thinking too much about it, without applying new level of consciousness, or without really expanding your consciousness, because you kind of you hit a plateau, if you will, and you continue. And if it's working for you, is good. You continue to do the same thing. You apply a little bit of discipline, but you continue to do the same thing without really uh, changing your consciousness. And again, that applies to a lot of mechanical stuff that we do, physical stuff that we do. And, like regular things, fun things like riding a bike, again, having to brush your teeth, driving, even the way you walk, the way you talk, all of that is very habitual, right? If you talk to
Yeah.
someone, a friend or someone 10 years ago, 10 years passes by, you talk to them, they still pretty much have the same language. They still talk the same way, right? The facial gestures, everything is part ingrained within their subconscious mind, right? And who call that a habit, right? A
Mm-hmm.
habitual way of doing things. Now, the idea of having a discipline is beyond just mechanical stuff, just beyond physical activities. A discipline to me is simply connecting to your higher self,
Mm.
connecting to the spiritual realm, if you will. So when you decide on a discipline, your actions, your application of what you do goes beyond your five senses, goes beyond your emotional state, your mental state, and what you have habitually programmed within the subconscious mind. You consciously make the decision on a daily basis to do the discipline.
Mm-hmm.
So a discipline is more intentional, and you do it from a level of consciousness that's beyond this earth. And that's what you're really doing. You're connecting to the higher consciousness through connecting to the inner guide, your inner self, which is within your heart center.
Yeah, it's
So,
like, so when we're talking about essentially a spiritual discipline, it has the intention, there's an intention above and beyond like a more physical habit or mechanical habit like driving a car. There's a deeper intention, and there's also a commitment. It's kind of something you have to choose to do most days. And it gets more habitual, like it gets easier to do, but it sounds like you're talking about you kind of have to recommit and re-choose it each day, and that's part of the discipline, that's part of the commitment.
so when we talk about discipline, we're talking about a spiritual discipline, which we're not tying into our physical activity. Is not through a habit. When we decide on a discipline, we do it consciously. So a lot of times, again, when we go throughout our life, our daily activities, 95% of what we do, the actions that we take, are driven and powered by the subconscious mind. Okay? From the time we wake up in the morning, we have a certain way of preparing ourselves for the day, right? Every action we take, even the way we breathe, and the way we, as we wake up in the morning, the way we talk initially, we get ourselves going, is through a habitual way. It's through a programming of the subconscious mind. So every action we take is powered by the subconscious mind. World of hypnotherapy, we say is 80-20, or actually 88-12. 88% of what we do comes from the power of the subconscious mind, and 12% is your conscious decision making. A lot of studies now, if you talk to scientists and studies that they've done, is they say is 90 to 95% of what we do is very subconscious, which is true. And again, is the mix of the two, right? But is by design for us to be able to not to have to continuously recreate what we do mechanically and physically. We don't want to learn everything that we do, the way we walk, the way we talk. If we have to remind ourselves how we walk again every day, we have to spend our whole day remembering those things, right? And again, that same mechanism, that same power of the subconscious mind helps us to create new habits, recreate what we want to do to enhance or transform our life in whatever way, whatever area we need to do. So again, that's part of a discipline action that we take. Spiritual discipline is something we decide that we want to do on a daily basis. And that level of consciousness has to go beyond our disciplined actions that we took before through habit. So every morning when we wake up, or it doesn't matter what time throughout the day when you do it, the discipline you do it no matter how you feel, no matter what emotional state you're in, no matter what mental state you're in. You take that discipline head on. You just go for it. And when you are in that level of consciousness that you take yourself beyond your normal habitual consciousness, beyond this earthly consciousness, beyond the polarized consciousness, you tap into your heart center. And through that heart-centered neutral mind and heart-centered consciousness, you connect to your higher consciousness. When you apply that to your practice and you trust, you bring that sense of trust and faith. That's what having faith means, is that you continuously take the action through your choice, your decision making. You're enhancing the power of your decision making and choosing to do what you want to do from a different level of consciousness.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking as you were talking, is there's an element with this spiritual discipline and committing to a new way of being, a new behavior, a new practice. In order for it to be consistent, there is an element of surrender, of I'm surrendering to this practice, regardless of how I feel, regardless of how busy I am, regardless, even if I'm sick, I'm going to find a way to do some version of practice, right? And we can modify depending on the situation, but having that surrender and commitment, and almost humility of I'm humbling myself to this practice and this process. And you could start it with an intention, but there's also an element of not being attached to the outcome. Because when you're engaged in spiritual discipline, we don't actually know, we don't have control over the outcome. The outcome is going to be what's in our best interest. And sometimes that's outside the scope of our own imagination or our own intention setting. And the other thing I was thinking is that discipline, the root of that word is a teacher. It's a teaching. And I love that it's translated into this idea of having like that initial process of establishing a daily or regular habit, especially in the spiritual realm of our life, because that practice is the true teacher. So any teaching you get, any great quote or inspiration, that's for the mind. And it's helpful and they're beautiful and they're fun to learn. But where the true transformation and the true like teaching experience that you get is through your discipline.
Exactly. I want to reiterate on what you mentioned, Jen, is that when we have a discipline, we're not too focused on the outcome. That's what, the saying is, that is the journey that we want to be part of. Is this whole thing is about the journey, is not a destination. So when you tap into that level of consciousness and we call it a practice for a reason. We're not going to get it perfect. We want to do the best we can. And again, what you said was so profound, that you surrender yourself. All these concepts and ideas have been given to us for for many years, for thousands and hundreds of thousands of years, to surrender. The language has been there, a little different, but this is all the same concept. The idea of not to be so attached to our earthly consciousness is given to us for a reason, and we have to find that. We have found that reason, but we applied such a rigid and limited level of consciousness to what we possess as human beings, the power that we have, the power of the subconscious mind, the power of our physical, emotional body. All of that is given to us for us to utilize to continue create on this earthly level, understanding that this, our consciousness is bounded by the polarized level of consciousness, but is being said many times over and over again, and a lot of people may say it, but they don't really allow it to sink in, that we are a spiritual being. We are more than just this physical, mental, and emotional bodies. When we say we're a spiritual being, we only refer to it as opposed to being a physical being. We're not only a physical being, we are a mental and emotional being as well. So we have to understand there's our mental state, our mental being, that is also affecting our physical being, and vice versa. So we are multi-level beings. But the aspect of us that is unconditional, that is not bounded by time and space, is our soul, that is connected to the spiritual realm. It connects us to the spiritual realm. So when we have a discipline, when we do a spiritual discipline, we are going beyond the physical, the earthly consciousness. We are intentionally and by choice connecting to the spiritual level of consciousness. So when we do that, we have to surrender our ego. We have to surrender our earthly consciousness that is very aware of time and space, rightly so, because the level of consciousness we dwell within is mainly aware of our environment, of our physicality, right? And that's why it's so important to us to also address that physical well-being and the emotional well-being and the mental well-being. The discussion here is about understanding and applying the holistic practice. Life is a practice. The holistic practice of our total being as a human being. And that puts us on a path of being heart-centered, that heart-centered consciousness. What we're talking about here is through our awareness within our heart-centered, through our awareness of this consciousness that we create, through applying the discipline of connecting to the spiritual realm on a daily basis, no matter how you feel, what's going on around you, you are tapping into that heart-centered revolution within yourself. You're starting that change direction of frequency, the energy within yourself, developing that Kundalini energy to create a revolution within every aspect of your life, within every dimension of who you are, within yourself. That inner work that needs to be done has to start from a different level of consciousness. If we continue to combat and battle the same habitual ways of doing things from the same level of consciousness, it will continue to be a conflict, and we will continue to go back and forth. So if spiritual discipline takes you to that different level of consciousness, takes you above all that's going on in the earthly realm within you, and that's the revolution. That's the change. That's the big step, the quantum leap that we are taking, all starts within us from a different level of consciousness within our heart, not the mind, not the brain.
It's so beautifully said and so powerful to recognize that these shifts, like you can battle back and forth with a habit, even like a mental habit in your own mind. But like what you're getting at is you can't solve a problem with the same consciousness that created it. And so by applying a spiritual discipline, it can be shocking how quickly mental changes, emotional changes, behavioral changes can come so easily if you just try to access it from a different vibration, from a different level of consciousness. And by having a regular spiritual discipline, you're also opening the channel, right? If we're in our mind trying to solve a problem, we're trying to make a change within the limitations of our own mind. But if you connect to your spirit and your intuition and that universal consciousness, now you have access to the creative force that makes universes. Like you have access to divine inspiration. You have access to essentially unlimited energy in a way. And so you have access to resources above and beyond what's in your own conscious and subconscious mind. So by using this discipline and dropping into the heart center and connecting to a universal spirit, it's really profound how quickly your perception and your experience of yourself and your life can change even before any material experience changes. It's an internal revolution that happens first. And then it does tend to make it easier to manifest changes in the more practical, physical aspects of your life. But it takes a little while for the earthly plane to catch up with your internal experience. And it takes a little while for relationships to catch up with your internal experience. But by tapping into a discipline of connecting to spirit, and like we're talking about being humble and kind of surrendering to the process and surrendering to the teachings, the quickness with which you can feel better or feel different is shocking, especially if you've been experiencing resistance for a while within yourself.
And that's what it is the resistance that we have within ourselves. And that's what we're doing by connecting to that higher level of consciousness to soothe out that resistance within, that conflict, right? On a lower level consciousness, when we talk about the conscious and the subconscious mind, a lot of the problems we face internally is the conflict we have between the conscious and the subconscious mind. What is already programmed within the subconscious mind and what we see, hear, and become aware of consciously through our five senses that is not incongruent with what's programmed in the subconscious mind. So there's so many aspects of us that's kind of at work here that we have to become aware of and understand to work with. And when we become aware of a lot of the different aspects of who we are that we need to work on mentally, emotionally, physically, the shortcut, really, if you will, is to take yourself above all these levels of consciousness. And that's the spiritual realm. And the spiritual realm is nothing but your imagination. Now, when I say that, is not to diminish what the spiritual realm is. The spiritual realm is this universal mind. We call the mind of God, is the all, the universe. In so many ways that has been expressed. Everything is inclusive, is part of this spiritual realm. We are part of this spiritual realm, of course, right? We are a spiritual being. So the universal mind holds the consciousness for everything else that exists within it, right? All of this, the way these realms exist is the same, is within a level of consciousness that is we call imagination. And you say we are in the image of God. So our imagination is a drop of the ocean of the universal mind. But that drop of water that's part of the ocean holds the same exact level of consciousness as the whole ocean. And as we put ourselves mentally and consciously within that realm of consciousness, we become it. We have access to everything that exists in the ocean.
That is so beautiful and profoundly said. I'm just really enjoying this conversation. And so, but one thing I had wanted to say, circling back around to habits, is to just like make it very clear that our habits aren't only behavioral. It's not just habits about food or driving or walking. We have thought habits. We have thought patterns that are habitual for us. We have emotional patterns that are habitual to us. We all have emotions that we gravitate towards, whether it's feeling overwhelmed or feeling stressed, or some people gravitate towards frustration and anger. So those are habits that you can also use discipline and use mindfulness to shift. A lot of us identify with our thought and emotional habits as though those are who we are, but they are not who we are. They are habits that have been programmed in our mind, and perhaps from a very young age. And so we might have received the feedback for our whole lives that we are depressed, or we are anxious, or we are angry, or we are these things. But these are habits that, with mindfulness and practice and awareness, they can be shifted.
A great point. I'm glad you brought that up, that our thoughts are habits too. And where do thoughts come from? Again, we talked about this before. Our thoughts, our habitual thoughts, are through the subconscious mind. And the subconscious mind has different levels. So the thoughts that we're talking about here comes from the subconscious mind, right? And comes through the subconscious mind. So what we have programmed within the subconscious mind attracts, law of attraction, attracts the thoughts. We get in the same frequency of whatever thoughts that come in internally, and we attract them. Okay, so what is the subconscious mind? The subconscious mind is part of your brain, part of the functionality of your brain. The subconscious mind is your body. The subconscious mind is the organs within your body. Everything you do gets captured, the energy and the frequency gets captured by your physical body, by every cell of your body. So the habitual thoughts come from you, and come through you. So if there are beliefs that say there are souls, there are spiritual beings that control your mind, is because you are operating at a frequency that you're attracting those thoughts. Those thoughts are coming through you. You're inviting them because through your emotional habit, through your mental habitual of doing things and actions, you continue to keep reprogramming the same level of consciousness. You attract those thoughts. So any way you look at it, through it from a subconscious mental level, you are in charge. Your actions, as you take different type of actions, as you apply a different level of consciousness, as you put yourself in that level of consciousness beyond what you are feeling, experiencing emotionally, mentally, and physically at this present moment, as you make that decision has a different energy associated with it. As you continue to think differently and act differently and apply different emotions, is your decision, is your choosing. As you exercise that choice, is a privilege that we have as a human being, the capacity within our consciousness to make choices. When we exercise choices, we are not bounded by the subconscious habit of way of thinking and thoughts. A lot of the problems that we have, that we don't exercise our choices. And as you exercise the choices that we have, as you tap into the unconditional level of consciousness, it's easier for you to connect to your higher consciousness. And that intuition we're talking about, the subtle voice, whisper, angelic voices that are talking to you are now become very clear. All of this is in place. Everything is in place here. There is no exclusion. There is no this versus that. It's all part of this universal mind. It's part of our imagination. Every aspect of who we are is part of our imagination, that part of universal mind. What makes us unique as human beings is the power of our heart-centered consciousness that we could apply on a daily basis, on a moment to moment, to everything that we do. That's what sets us apart from everything else. That's what makes us unique. And to this day, that power of the heart-centered consciousness has not been valued and exercised as much as it could be. We talk about love, we talk about many things, we talk about compassion, and we apply it here or there, but is not the basis of our consciousness, is not the driving force of our consciousness. Our mental level of consciousness is the driving force. We value that more than anything else. That's the attachment that we're talking about. That's the evil when it comes to our earthly matters within this material world.
So to wrap up our conversation, we've been talking about how a discipline or commitment to a spiritual practice can really help you drop into your heart center and connect with the universal spirit, the universal intelligence. And by doing that, you can sidestep or kind of reprogram your subconscious mind. And you can almost immediately start to feel differently in your life and start to experience transformations, some of which might be ones that you intended to have happen, and some might just happen naturally as the intelligence within you and within the universe can recognize what's in your best interests. But making a small change like adding spiritual discipline or a practice to your day-to-day life, while it can feel overwhelming to have another thing to do, that one thing can change how the rest of your day feels. It can help you feel less stressed and more in flow. And it can just unlock a different way of experiencing yourself and the world around you.
And the discipline we have in Kundalini Yoga is our sadhana, our morning sadhana more specifically. So when we wake up early in the morning, the first thing we do, no matter how much sleep we had or how our body feels, you get into that connection to the spiritual realm through the practice. And you could develop your own sadhana, if you will. And it doesn't matter what time of the day it is. You choose the time of the day, but you get into that practice without allowing your mental state, your emotional state to get in the way.
I told you it was an interesting topic. I get these emails from Ramtin from time to time where he just will email me a couple paragraphs as some inspiration has hit him. And this was one of those. It's always fun. He has a very special mind where he's just gets these downloads of clarity and information and just things to teach people. It's very inspiring. All right, so time to dive into our pranayam meditation for today. Since this one is more of a formal meditation, we're going to tune in with Om Namo Gurudev Namo before we do the pranayam. If you've never tuned in before, or if you're in a public place, you can just listen to the vibrations as I tune in. This sounds Om Namo Gurudev Namo. They translate to I bow to the divine wisdom within myself. And so these words just allow us to connect and align with the divinity that we have within ourselves, or with our own sacred intuition and intelligence. So we'll tune in and then we'll jump into the brief meditation. Okay, rubbing your palms together, sitting up nice and tall. Press your palms together at the center of the chest. Shoulders can come up, back, and down. Let's take a deep breath, inhaling deeply. Exhale completely. Inhale to tune in. Om Namo Gurudev Namo. Om Namo Gurudev Namo. Inhaling deeply. Suspend the breath briefly. Pulling the energy up the central channel of the body, out the crown of the mind, the crown of the head. Exhale. Relaxing your body. Coming into a long, deep breathing pattern. Just inhaling through the nose. Exhaling completely. Just listen as I describe how to do this meditation. So we're going to do the body positioning or the mudra first. So you're going to place your left hand over your heart so that your fingers are parallel to the floor. And so your thumb is kind of pointing upwards. And that's your left hand. And then your right hand will be in Gyan Mudra. So your pointer finger and thumb are touching, and the other 3 fingers are pointed upwards. And then your hand is up by your shoulder with your elbow down, almost like you're doing a pledge. And so the palm is facing forward. The fingers are pointing up. So that's our mudra. Left hand over heart. Right hand in Gyan Mudra up by the shoulder. Okay, you can drop the hand position as I describe the breath pattern. So the most important part of this breath pattern is to just keep your focus on your breath, on the flow of the breath. So what we're going to do is we're going to inhale deeply and suspend the breath as long as you gracefully can. So don't cling to the breath. Don't harden your body to hold the breath in. Just hold it as long as you can gracefully, and then exhale. And then holding the breath all the way out. Suspend the breath as long as you can gracefully. If you're holding it so long that you're like breathing in or exhaling forcefully, you're holding too long. This is a graceful, gentle hold. And as you practice, the length with which you can hold it will get longer because your lungs get more conditioned to hold and suspend the breath. But there's no contest. This is just a practice, right? All right, so now that we're tuned in and we know what we're doing, let's get into the position. So left hand is over the heart with the fingers parallel to the floor. So the thumb's kind of pointing up. The right hand is in Gyan Mudra, lifted up by the shoulder, palm facing forward, fingers facing up. Eyes can be closed or looking forward through 1/10 eyelids if you have that as part of your practice. And then let's take a deep breath together, just a regular breath. Inhaling deeply. Exhale completely. And then inhaling to begin. Inhale slowly and deeply through both nostrils. Then suspend the breath in. Make sure your chest is lifted. We want to keep our heart center open. And when you need to exhale, exhale smoothly and completely. Once you've exhaled completely, suspend the breath gently. And then breathe in slowly and deeply. Exhale and hold the breath out. Your pattern will not be the same as mine. To wrap up this meditation, we're going to take 3 deep breaths. So wherever you're at, exhale completely. And then inhale. Exhale. Inhale strongly. Exhale powerfully. Inhale last time. Exhale. And now relax the posture. Relax the breath. Check in with your mental, emotional, and spiritual states to see what this meditation did for you. The notes say that emotionally, this meditation adds clear perception to your relationships with yourself and others. If you are upset at work or in a personal relationship, sit in this meditation for 3 to 15 minutes before deciding to act. Then act with your full heart. Physically in the body, this meditation strengthens the lungs and heart. It says that this meditation is perfect for beginners. It opens awareness of the breath and it conditions the lungs. If you want to try to play with it at home and you have more time, you can do it for 3 minutes on and then 1 minute of rest, and 3 minutes on and 1 minute of rest. And if you do 3 cycles of that, you'll have a nice 11-minute meditation. And if you're up for it and feeling advanced, then you can build up to 31 minutes of inhaling, suspend, exhaling, suspend. As always, thank you so much for being here with us this week. We so appreciate you spending these moments with us and listening to our ideas and downloads. We would love to hear from you. If you have any questions or just want to connect, you can email us at jen@heartcenteredrevolution.com or ramtin@heartcenteredrevolution.com. And we're Heart Centered Revolution on Instagram as well. All right, we will connect with you next time. And just a little reminder to be revolutionary.